So now we're going to go through another option that you could use in your pillow prep programming, specifically looking at the squat. Again, we've got lots of options here. You don't do all of these necessarily, and these certainly aren't the only options. So one day we could focus on the ankles. Maybe that's our red thread, is creating that shape down there at the bottom of that squat that's reverse engineered. But this one we're going to look at next is focusing more on the hips, right? Again, if we look at this little shape, this little wonderfully drawn stick figure here, we notice that we're in this extreme degree of hip flexion, right? So we need to be able to get in there. So to be able to do that, if I need to be in the strong hip flex position, I've got to loosen up that backside a little bit and then focus on patterning it all together. So to open up that backside, we're maybe going to do a little soft tissue work on the glutes or the hamstrings. Again, these are by no means the only options. This is just an example following our protocols. Then we're going to go into something with more of a mobility emphasis movement. So Stefan's going to demo our bent knee hamstring stretch. So you'll notice here, right, we're getting him into a degree of hip flexion, right? If you notice, if you take shapes, right, if we were to take his other leg up here and put him into a position here, he's essentially at the bottom of his squat, right? So right off the bat, we know that we're kind of in a right position here, focusing on the limiting factor, the bottom of that squat. So if we're here, he's just going to drive that heel up towards the sky. He doesn't necessarily need to straighten his leg completely, and then he's going to hold it for a few seconds, breathe into it, then come back down. Driving up towards the sky, breathing into it, coming back down. But again, we're addressing that limiting factor from a mobility side on the posterior chain. So once he's done a few each side, we're going to move forward into our next movement, which is our quadruped rocking. Now, this is a phenomenal exercise that can be a little bit challenging to coach, which is why we wanted to throw this in here, because a lot of people can just kind of skip all the way through it. Now, before we get into it, I want to show again the shape, right? If we were to turn Stefan up on his feet as he went down, he's essentially in the bottom of that squat position, right? So again, same type of concept, just making shape. So we're going to put him back down here. Now he's got a little bit of a gravity assist for him too. It's a little bit less of a risky position. But all we're going to do, we want to keep this nice neutral spine, focusing mostly on the hips so they stay neutral as they go down. A lot of people, what you're going to see here is that pelvis is going to tuck under, and we're going to get into that posterior tilt. So we want to keep everything neutral and pattern that, especially the bottom of that squat. So from here, we've opened up that backside to allow for him to get maybe a little bit more range as he goes in there. So looks very simple. You can also add some type of external stimulus on the backside, like a stability ball, and actively press into that. So you're really focusing on being active in the bottom of that squat versus letting gravity just kind of pull you down. So again, we've got this nice pathway. We start with some soft tissue work. We go into a little bit more of a mobility focus. Now we come into this kind of stability, active element, and now we've got this nice red thread of creating this good hip flexed pattern into his squatting, where maybe we're loading that sometime later on in the session. So again, we reverse engineered based on the shapes and the limiting factors that we're hitting.